Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar today. I'm excited to introduce our host, Matt Snyder. He is the founder and CEO of Brands Excel and a Kapoq customer, and we're happy to have him here. I'll introduce myself as well. My name is Ryan Burgess. I'm a growth partner here at Kapoq, working with all of our partners, such as Matt, to help grow your businesses on Amazon. And if you're not familiar with Kapoq, we are a software provider that helps manage all aspects of your Amazon business. And we like to think we are the best tool to manage multiple brands on Amazon. So anything from content protection and management to inventory forecasting to advertising, control and automation, powerful analytics and accounting, and customer experience management, all of that can be done through Kpoc. If you'd like to learn more, you can check out our website, but we do have quite the collection of modules that can help you run your business, especially if you manage multiple clients. We're excited to learn more about the challenges that brands are facing today and how we can navigate these uncertain times on Amazon. With that intro out of the way in terms of Kpoc, I'll pass it over to Matt to introduce himself and Brands Excel, and then we'll dive into the agenda today.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate the introduction there and excited to have this conversation with you and everyone here today. Obviously, very relevant for pretty much anybody who's in retail or Amazon space. So, as you shared, my name is Matt Snyder. I'm the founder, president, CEO of Brands Excel. So, we started our agency a little around over 2 years ago. Prior to that, I was on the brand side. I was the vice president of online retail for a mid eight-figure brand called Desk. And during my time in that position, I came to realize is that half my time was fighting battles on Amazon, so Amazon Media, Amazon product pages, and so forth. The other half was working within a broader business that where Amazon was foreign to everybody else, and it was not necessarily the priority. And so where I had to go and work with other department heads to gain the support we needed to support Amazon. And so what we do with Brands Excel is we work with brands who are not native to Amazon. So whether you're a D2C brand or you're maybe a vendor and you're looking to move over to the marketplace, while we say that usually what stalls your growth isn't that you have bad media, it's that you have bad business operations. And so we help build out those services around business operations and then lead in with best in class Amazon marketplace services such as catalog management, SEO conversion, and Amazon Media. But yeah, I'd say that the part that really separates us is that focus on the initial business operations. And really that leads us into conversation today of right now, I think what in this landscape we're in, what everyone's trying to figure out is how do we improve our efficiencies on the operations side relative to what we're needing to do from strategy with inventory and media and everything else. There's a lot of different factors to consider right now. And important that brands are really leaning into this period of time. And there's a lot of challenges that we'll walk through. It's also going to be, hopefully it's a time where a lot of companies can come out on the other side of this in a stronger position for the long term. We'll walk through these 7 different points here throughout the conversation today. And then hopefully we have some time here at the end where we can do some Q&A as well too. Okay, so obviously economic and policy headwinds is the major headwind for everyone right now. No one's surprised in terms of what's in the news right now with tariff increases. We have inflation, we have high interest rates. All of these factors are creating a unique situation. And so it's not just one issue that all brands are dealing with, it's multiple different factors. And all these are leading into how do we address our inventory position or forecasting our business model related to these different headwinds. So with that, the way that we are looking at this is as revenue becomes harder to protect, brands must prioritize their margin preservation over growth at all costs. And right before this, we were having some conversations around some of the brands we're working with. And what's to keep in mind here, there is no singular answer here for all brands. Everybody's in different positions related to margin costs, related to inventory positioning, maturity of your brand, of your business, what are your long-term goals? All those things play into a factor in terms of like what is the right solution for you. So as we're walking through these, keep that in mind that the idea here is to help give you some guidance in terms of how do you weigh these different variables for your business and the uniqueness of your business to get on the other side of what is the best strategy and next steps for you. So with that, and that comes down to this first point of like scenario planning. And this is something we're trying to help our brands out with quite a bit of creating that kind of model baseline. We probably all came into this year with a forecast and a plan for our 2025 business, and that's gone. It's completely out the window for everybody at this point. But as we start trying to think looking forward, is as we get on the other side of this, what are the various different planning scenarios that we need to be thinking through? So thinking through that best case scenarios to stress test your budget, your operating plans. So many times what we see looking back on the COVID years is as things began to open up and supply chains started coming up, there's this huge influx in orders, shipments. So how do we have to operate in the now, and we have to operate into like how do we get through this week into next week. We also need to start thinking about once we're on the other side of this, how do I start preparing our business for that next season of change, and when things are, I don't want to say getting back to normal, but when these things start to unravel, how do we position ourselves for that? So reforecast with updated cost, factor in your new landed costs, fee increases, and financing rates when evaluating SKU profitability. And we're going to touch some more here on the profitability, but I'd say now more than ever, the importance is a lot of brands we're talking with is we're willing to sacrifice in our top line business right now for the efforts of maintaining our profitability, trying to maximize as much profitability as we can. So delaying on those non-essential investments right now. A lot of brands we're chatting with is what are the things, areas we can consolidate, whether that's services, headcount, tools we're leveraging, or those areas we can consolidate. But there's also some consolidation within your catalog. And we'll dive deeper into this here in a little bit. But these are the kind of the three areas of like really diving into this and working through your business planning scenarios, understanding that from those different paths forward, what's the cost implications and margin impacts to your product and to your business, and being able to make sure that your operations and inventory is in a place to be able to react to each of those three different forecast plans that you work up. So supply chain inefficiencies, and again, we lead in really with this business operations. And so this is something that we're doing a lot of conversations right now with our brands and our partners. So operation disruptions here in the middle mile with Amazon's FBA network. So what we're seeing here, and I'm sure everyone can relate, is there's capacity limits that have just recently been introduced. And say there's always been capacity limitations, but now with this new capacity limit at the ACE level, we're running into challenges where we'll see some growth on a particular product. We want to get it replenished right away. Algorithm hasn't caught up. How do we work through those variables as Amazon continues to just throw little surprises into our situation? But we're also seeing receiving times being longer for some of our brands. And so the longer that we have that period of time where the inventory is not in fully sellable condition, that's a strain on your cash flow and your return on cash. So what are options that we can do to pull back those receiving timelines, as well as the inbound placement fees? And those, I think a lot of brands are in a better position than where they were, say, a month or 2 months ago. We've had some time now to figure this out. But that is another area where we've really leaned in to try and make sure that we have solutions to help our brands overcome those challenges in inbound placements.
And to your earlier point, Matt, the having receiving times for FBA already in the 40 to 60 days on average is pretty bad, especially with Prime Day coming up in a couple of months, which we're going to talk about. But to your earlier point, as soon as things do, if they do open back up or change drastically in terms of the trade agreements, we should expect to see that number probably jump as well,
Absolutely.
as everyone's going to be flooding the shipping lanes and the inbounding into FBA, trying to get all of that inventory restocked. It's a tough position to be in, obviously, knowing that you have basically only a few weeks to get your inventory in before Prime Day, but that's the reality of the situation, and it's probably going to get worse the longer you wait.
So as we think about maybe some considerations here, recommendations, is we just encourage our brands to be as flexible as we can logistics solutions that can cut costs and speed up replenishment timelines. As you just called out, we need to be thinking the now, but also be thinking down the road. And as things begin to ease up, we have a agreement comes in place. Everyone's going to be rushing to move forward. So how do we get ahead of that? Have the operations in place so that when that does happen, we're not getting stuck in those bottlenecks. So for us, like a few of the ways that we've addressed this is leveraging strategic 3PLs. And this doesn't necessarily have to be like my 3PL is doing FBA or FBM shipments or LSFP. Those are strategies that we do help brands implement. And I think that for the right brand and the right product, those are very key advantages to have in place. But we've actually worked with this on quite a bit. And where they've helped us in this is one, in terms of being able to ship it directly into them. So we're shipping to one location versus multiple locations. They can do all the kitting and prepping for us. But the big pieces for them that have really been supporting us is instead of shipping to, again, the inbound placement fees, instead of shipping to 6+ warehouse locations or paying that inbound placement fee, we're able to send to just their location, which has reduced costs significantly. But the big win was actually on the receiving time, where we're seeing with them, because they have so much volume going to every single warehouse location in the entire FBA network, that we can get a receiving time is 2 weeks or less. And so going from that 40 to 60 days to 14 days or less, huge advantage. And as you call it, like as we're getting into Prime Day, and as if when a deal comes, the influx, being able to get ahead of that curve, they have really helped a lot of our partners be in a much better position. And also, with that, before you get the inventory into a place like Zonguru or FBA, you have to do the right forecasting. And I'll definitely highlight Kapoq for this solution. Our team lives in this tool of inventory forecasting and planning daily. So being able to have the right variables that help get you to that number. Amazon does a decent job in Seller Central of giving you some inventory forecasting, but where we found the limitations was being able to account for other factors such as lead time with our manufacturer, production time, also being able to add in different growth levers that maybe Amazon's not able to factor in. Those are key things that Kapoq has really positioned our team to be far more accurate than what we found on the Seller Central time. And again, as we're trying to think of how to position ourselves for the future, leveraging these type of tools have really been instrumental for us and our team.
Yeah. And I'll just add that we've done a lot of content Kapoq has in terms of unit forecasting and how our algorithms work, but also how we approach the topic as a whole. So I'll drop a link in the chat here if you're interested to check that out. One question I had for you, Matt, in terms of working with a strategic 3PL like Zonguru, if there's a brand listening today that hasn't gone through this process, what is the onboarding timeline look like for that? How long does it take, would you say, from the time that you agree to move forward with a 3PL to when they're fully up and running, assuming that there's no other delays with actually getting the inventory to them?
So obviously the classic response of it depends, but it does depend in terms like what's the size of your catalog. I'd say in general, getting an account set up, getting things moving. We've seen things as quick as 5 to 7 days of getting an account set up, getting the initial plan going. And then from there, like the timeline can vary depending on if we're bringing in, we want you to take over 10 ASINs or we want you to take over 100 ASINs. So the timeline depends there. But I would say that Guion and team there have been highly responsive. They move quick and they know this business inside and out. So again, as all these different factors that you're trying to weigh, lean into these experts who they are going to be on the forefront of understanding what's coming down or what to expect in terms of logistical challenges. Lean into people like Kavion to really help give you that insights and expertise. Because I don't know about you, like I know a lot more around Amazon Media and things like that than I do freight carriers and global logistics. So
And the
leverage those
details
experts.
of free
Yeah,
trade zones. Yeah, it gets
exactly.
complicated fast. Yeah.
So again, just we've highlighted a little bit about the team here, but just calling out the kitting, the bundling, the single warehouse locations that can manage all your marketplaces, and we're going to highlight this a little bit later on as well. But being able to have a solution that can solve all my marketplace as well as my D2C is really strategic advantage. And I mentioned Seller Fulfill Prime earlier, and that's something we did back at Veridesk, and I will tell you that was a huge advantage for us being able to flex that inventory between not just Amazon or having it locked up with Amazon, but being able to have that ability to, again, in this position where we are right now, if I want to favor one channel over the other, having a place like a 3PL that can allows me to flex that inventory is a huge advantage right now. So feel free to scan there. They'll give you mention in Brands Excel, and Kavion will give you guys a good entry discount to get started. So thinking through like profit compression and just the financial blind spots, I would say right now is a time where brands should be doing a very extensive and thorough review of their P&L and where are the gaps in their business model that's either just sucking away at their profits. And at this point, every little piece of profit is contributes to larger impact there. So now is the time to really lean in. And again, echo Kapoq here is a great service for us. We lean into the P&L extensively here with our brands of helping make sure like where are all those opportunities for us to gain some advantage. So recently with this, Amazon's made some revisions to the reimbursement program. And one of the ways that we have leaned into this is doing that comparison where Amazon now is also, unless you give them your COGS, they're doing this own evaluation of what is the value of your product. And so when those reimbursements occur, it's going off of that valuation. And where we have seen is that sometimes there's some pretty big differences between the actual cost of goods and what Amazon's providing you. So we've worked with a team at Valiance to do some audits for us to get that measurement of what is that financial impact for us. And then how do we then go back to Amazon and build the right case without necessarily having to give them our full COGS or our supplier information and so forth. So how do we build that case to be able to get those in a better position? And I'll share some more here in just a moment. But
Yeah.
the other then is just the subscription tools and legacy kind of workflows, adding costs to clear ROI. So we talked a little bit in terms of, I'll speak for myself. I love SaaS tools. I love AI services. And one of the things that as we're building at our team, where we are really leaning in, is how do I build better automations and processes around these different tools? Where are the ones where maybe there's some overlaps that if I cut this one out, I can get more out of this? And again, my shameless plug for you guys for Kapoq, but that's one of the things I love here is that it really does help us get visibility and insights into each different piece of what we'll call the flywheel effect of forecasting, inventory, media, analytics, P&L, inventory planning, all those different things. So again, this is the time to really dive into each piece of your business and look for any type of inefficiencies that are going to lead to dollars, losing those profit dollars.
Yeah. And I'll just share a real world example in case maybe you haven't gone through this new reimbursement valuation process yet for your account or your brand. But a recent example that I just went through was a product that retails for $309, costs about $152 to make. Amazon's default reimbursement value for that item is about $25 USD.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So make sure you're double checking all of that. And it could
Yeah.
add up to a lot of money depending on your situation.
Yeah. Man, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
And again, we using tools like Cape can be really beneficial. We've had to do some pullback here on our side in terms of this stack that we have. And what that has caused me to do then is really leaning with our team and making sure like how do we build out a better system with the tools we have and make more stronger use for them. But this is really, again, the age of AI right now. This is the time where we build those automations and efficiencies. And I think of it as not that I'm trying to replace my team members, but how do I make my team members, their export of work or their time spent on work, that much more valuable? And these are all things I think everyone's been thinking about, but it's in these kind of challenging times where it really forces you to put the work ethic, and maybe the timeline you had gets accelerated because you're really forced into making those projects get done and that little extra work. As I shared with Valiance, this is just an example of what we did here with a recent brand of ours. And what we're looking at is doing a comparison of your 24 FB reimbursements to what are we seeing so far since the adjustments here, and be able to get that deep look into those changes, and breaking that out between the different reimbursement causes. So whether it's damaged inbound, lost warehouse, damaged warehouse, all those then gives you the right data points and to build that case to go back to Amazon to try and position yourself to adjust those COGS. As you mentioned earlier, the big discrepancy that you have with one of your clients. The QR code up there will give you an opportunity to submit, and that they are offering some great deals right now to do these audits for, I think it's $100 to get a full thorough audit. Highly recommend their team, and they've been one of the most transparent and just great teams that we've worked with to help us solve these problems for our brand partners. So this is a hard one for some of our brands, but because everyone falls in love with their products. But really, I think what we have seen, and I think a lot of brands need to do the self-evaluation, is that we have overbloated catalogs, and there's just inefficiencies there that are draining dollars. So carrying too many underperforming SKUs, dragging down your margins, overextending the operations, and complicating your forecasting and your fulfillment. It really is a time to think about how do we simplify our business And across the board, we should be thinking like the 80/20 rule across everything. So as we're taking a good look in terms of when I say like long tail ASINs from prior growth periods that are now slowing. So think of those products where you've got multiple different variations of colorways, sizes, styles. Usually within those, we have some hero products. We have some, but we also have those that are dragging down performance. And before it was easy to justify having those because there wasn't in our mind this operational expense. But now those are things that are weighing down those operational dollars you have into COGS that we need to be able to think through moving faster. And that relates into the just the ad spend and operational bandwidth supporting these low return on investments. So how do we reduce the time and efforts that our teams are putting into things that are not optimal from a profitability? And just again, it adds complexity then to your suppliers when they're having to produce multiple different sizes or colorways for your orders. So again, think through simplicity.
And Matt, how do you think about resource allocation? Maybe you'll get into this in a future slide, not even just across products in the catalog, but maybe across marketplaces or channels that you sell on. Is that something that should be under the microscope too, in terms of, hey, do we move our ad spend from the US to the UK for several months, or maybe we just slow down in general? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is a very fluid situation right now, and I think the challenge here is that for me and where we are at with our brands is those who have already had a international presences. It makes it a little easier for us to be able to collect some dollars or products into those markets. As of today, there's news coming out of US and UK deal coming through, which also now that kind of puts some of them maybe a better position to lean into to UK. But again, these things are coming fast right now. And so I would say it's based upon where you were prior to this, it's going to be hard to maybe lean too much into a new market and see quick results.
Yeah.
We're looking at more as how do we just weather, and if it's international or something like that, or a new market, this just means we've learned from this that we need to be better positioned the next time around when the next issue comes up, so we're not caught in that position. With us, we're not shifting too much yet, but I think within the marketplaces is where there's more opportunity. If you're within the US, your inventory is all here, the markets, there's a product market fit already established. That's where this is a time to start thinking through, do I push more into my DTC? Do I push more into my Walmart? And yeah, I know we're going to touch on that a bit more here, but the inverse of that I would say is on your inventory. And I'd say applying this 80/20 lens to your catalog, identify those top performing SKUs, cut out or consolidate on your non-essential variations. It's again, when times are great, it's easy to add in a few more colorways or sizes to appease our customers who are maybe asking for it. But if we know that those are lower volume sellers, that's just weighing down those inventory dollars, but it's also adding complexity then to your manufacturer. So where we have seen some examples of when we went back to the supplier and we were able to reduce down the colorway, we actually were able to get an overall better cost because by lowering down the time or efforts for our hero products, those those are ways that in the long run is just going to improve our ROI and make it simpler for maintaining our product listings, our inventory, everything else. Just simplify at this point right now. And it's easy to not think through this when times are great, but this is a good time to really go through your catalog and cut out those suboptimal products in your catalog. So with what we're seeing was between Amazon, retail, D2C, like they're all performing differently. They all have headwinds right now. They're all having different challenges. So this is a good time to, as we were just stating earlier, is do an analysis of where should we be putting our emphasis in the immediate times, but also where do we see better opportunities down the road? As we commented before, and everyone is experiencing Amazon's rising fees, they're squeezing our margins, whether that's through FBA, trying to push this into things like AWD, ads costs going up. There's a number of different factors that's all causing those margins to be squeezed down.
New coupon and deal fees.
Capacity limits, right? All these different things that put our business at risk. So it's easy to, you think things like D2C growth, with the challenges there is we're just seeing it harder to get the ad performance there. You don't have the same relevant audience that you have on Amazon. So there can be more challenges in building up that traffic base. But this is maybe a time to try to lean into those opportunities of how do we build out a better DTC experience We mentioned 3PLs earlier. This is again, pushing into a 3PL is a great way then to position yourself better for DTC business as well too. Also, the biggest challenge I'd say right now is retailers. If you're in the retail business, that's probably the most hardest impact right now because the timelines of when orders are placed, deliveries are made, just it's where we've seen the most slower pullback in with our brands right now. So as you think through like how do we, whether the ways we can react to this, so reallocating your inventory by channels. As I mentioned earlier, when I was at Veridesk, we did a we didn't use FBA at all. That's partially just because we were a large, bulky product. But what we learned from that was when we gave that same Amazon experience on our D2C site, we saw those Amazon customers come and buy from us in our D2C experience. So this is a time to lean into those new opportunities, whether it's looking at Walmart, Target, TikTok. We'll say maybe TikTok. There's yet to be seen what's going to happen here with the administration in the next coming months on that one too. But I think that this is a time where we're trying to reevaluate our entire business. Let's reevaluate those other markets and how they can benefit us long term with our brand as well too. As we think through like developing that tier channel strategy, focusing on the core growth channels while maintaining lower risk presence. That's where again you're never, for most cases, trying to build out your own warehouse solutions is never going to be more cost effective than having a good 3PL partner. And I've mentioned flexibility a few different times here, but is again thinking through like how do we position ourselves so that if something like this were to occur again, how do we make sure we have better flexibility, either through our freight and logistics, our manufacturing, our supplying. Right now, with this approach, everything, pretty much every manufacturer globally has been impacted, but obviously some more than others. And so if you were very highly dependent on China, how do we position ourselves maybe to have more diversity around other countries that maybe have less risk long term with these type of impacts or tariffs? So I'd see on the other side of this that there should be opportunities to be far less dependent on a singular nation or manufacturer for our products and manufacturing.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, we've made this point already, but avoiding committing all of that inventory to one sales channel too. And so obviously sending it all into FBA is pretty limiting, but even AWD, even though they do technically support multi-channel fulfillment, there's a lot of issues with that. And again, going back to the influx of demand and traffic for Amazon's fulfillment services that we anticipate as things start to ramp back up, AWD will almost certainly not be prioritizing those multi-channel fulfillment orders where
Yeah.
they already have delays. So just another point to really investigate whether a 3PL makes sense.
Yeah. And I've talked to multiple brands where AWD has been a great success, and I've talked with brands where it has been a nightmare. And so I think just as with FBA, we all have there's a huge value add it brings, but there's also the challenges it can bring, and that goes along with AWD as well too. So again, I think it can be a great resource for some brands, and for other brands, it's not going to be the best solution. And that goes back to, there's no singular solution or answer here that applies to everyone. It's how do we think through the different challenges that our brand and business has, and then how do we build towards the best solution for ourselves. So I'll call this like the tariff inventory is worth more, treat it like it is. And I think this is going to lead into some hard decisions for a lot of brands moving forward. As this came out, it was like, do we raise prices? What do we do promotional wise? So the inventory that you had pre-tariff increase is worth twice as what your new inventory will be at this time if you're still bringing products in with the higher tariff mark. So things like deep discounts on high velocity events. We all have Prime Day coming up. So there's some hard decisions to be made here around what do we do promotionally wise it's going to lower our profitability, but then would help on the top line side. And then just strategic timing of sales is essential to maximize profitability. So as we're thinking through, again, there's all hopeful that there's some solution down the road here. So how do we get ahead of trying to think through the right timing of this to balance the inventory we have versus inventory we have coming to ensure that we have enough profit dollars coming in to keep us in business through this period. So
Yeah.
really and we've hit on this, is thinking through like it's channel management, it's inventory management across these different places to maximize our profit dollars. So we're telling brands to reevaluate your promotions. So avoid the discounting high margin inventory during high volume events unless it really supports your long-term plans. This is going to be a big one for Prime Day. And for us, we're having conversations around our brands, and some are landing in different positions. We have a brand who's just getting started on Amazon, strong D2C business, getting rolling on Amazon. So they're in a high growth phase. They were also in a position where they had high inventory leading into this. So they're in a really strong position. So we're leaning in heavy into Prime Day for them, pushing through and focusing on this is an opportunity for us to lean in with advertising, with good, great deals, in the hopes that we're going to gain market share from some of our competitors who are potentially holding back or pulling back. We have another one of our partners who's much larger traditional retail brand, well-known national brand. Inventory is not necessarily a constraint, but they are really factoring or focusing in on margin dollars during this time as well too. And so for them, we're not running any type of promotions. We're going to lean in with our media dollars. We're going to just ride the wave of increased traffic, extra media spend, making sure we're in front of customers' shopping experience, but with no discounts and maximizing those profits. And then a third that's in the gaming space. And for them, they've been probably more impacted than some of our other brands. And where they are going to lean in with discounts, they're pulling back on the media side. Right. And so again, there is no singular solution here. It really depends on you, where your brand is. Where is the strength right now? Is it in inventory? Is it in brand recognition? Is it in we're going to focus on our revenue and our market position so that as we get on the other side of this, we can be in a better position than where we were before and make up those dollars down the road. And that comes down to what's your capital position and profitability going into this.
Yeah.
All very different results in each kind of based upon their long-term strategy, but also the place of strength that they're coming from.
That's definitely something that I hear everyone talking about right now. There's the 50-50 split in terms of now is the time to stay aggressive, go harder on your advertising, don't raise prices. And then there's the other side of the coin, which is save all of your ad spend, raise prices immediately, take action now to protect yourself. And so I really like how you've outlined those three examples of different strengths and attributes for each brand and how they navigated that decision for themselves. And so it's not a black and white, you either are all in or you're all out. It's very much focused on what your strengths are based on how you entered this time of uncertainty. And obviously, nobody saw this coming at the levels that it has happened. How you respond to it could indicate how the rest of the year looks for you in the market. And certainly there will be brands that are stepping up to take market share during this time, and there will be brands that suffer as a result of that.
And again, we've talked about flexibility. You could, and with these three kind of outlines I just shared in terms of our strategies, what we are continuing to do is also watch the market. And if we see one of our competitors all of a sudden take a drastic change in their approach that then impacts our market share, well, then we need to be being able to be flexible, react quickly to the ongoing changes. And so that's the plan we have today, but that plan could be completely different next week if we see different changes in the market. So that's, again, flexibility and being able to adapt, but also knowing your strengths, your position of strength, and what is your long-term goal here as a brand. So preparing for the tariff announcements and scaling is right now we're in the moment. All of our focus is how do we react in the now, but let's take lessons learned from COVID. And when things began to ease and open up, there's an influx with our manufacturers. There's a huge bloat of logistics of container loads. Container prices went through the roof. All that could be happening again here with everyone's pulled back. Now there's going to be a big wave going forward. So how do we get ahead of that? How do we make sure we're in a position so that we get our orders in with our manufacturer, we can secure our warehouse, our container loads, and all those different things. And again, as I said earlier, we focus on business operations, but these are things that go beyond like the expertise of myself. And I know what the bottlenecks are going to be for you in your position, work from your position of strength, but also then where are the shortfalls that we need to be planning for. And that's where some things that we've identified is how can we get ahead of this in terms of just pre-negotiating production priorities. Everyone's going to be going to their suppliers and pushing for new orders. So how can we get ahead of that in terms of, are there ways that we can engage with them to give more favor to us and our products, whether that being through payment terms or guaranteed purchases down the line? What are the ways that we can get creative to ensure that we are in the best position when things do open back up with our production timelines? We talked a little bit about in terms of like diversify country of origin. This is a wet time for us. Actually, how we can start having some conversations in other countries, whether that's India, Mexico, right? And this all is dependent in terms of your product, but use this time as well as diversify, get away from a single source that if everyone's going to them at the same time, puts you in a position of risk of not getting your product. So there are other ways that we can outsource our inventory or our production to other countries that have equal quality and production times. So with that, we also have some big timelines coming up. And so we've talked on Prime Day, and we wanted to just make sure everyone's aware of kind of the timelines here we have to work with, because as we're making these decisions right now, we've got some big decisions to make right now in the immediate future. So coming up on the 15th is where if you have product in AWD, you've got to have that to your FBA. Then the 23rd, that's the last day to lock in best deals, lightning deals. June 9th is or FBA inventory deadline to get the minimal shipments. So again, if you're trying to get as fewer shipments to less locations, and then on the 18th, if you use the optimized shipment plans. So again, we're less than
5 weeks.
45 days, 5 weeks here, and all these different variables. So there's a lot of considerations to take in right now. And I'm sure everyone is doing it, but this is the time right now. Again, align what is our promotion plan? Where are we working from our position of strength? What's the long-term goals that we have? And those really are going to drive then how do we react and plan for Amazon Prime Day? So with that, to talk through a few things, but in terms of forecast different scenarios, this is one of the things we're trying to do too, is based upon the timelines we just talked about coming to Prime Day, how do we better prepare based upon if we run this deal, if we don't run this deal, we're kind of running those multiple different scenarios right now for our brands to help them make those decisions, and then weighing the timelines as well. The big one here is like monitor the policy developments. Things are moving quickly, and this is where again leaning back into experts like Zonprep on the team, or your freight broker, right? Their business is all highly dependent on getting ahead of these curves, and so find those right partners and consultants who can really help you get ahead of the curve when it comes to expectations and timelines. With that, we're going to just closing thoughts here. So we've talked about having leaner catalogs. This is a time to revamp, apply the 80-20 rule to your catalog. Where are those products that, great times, it's nice to have these, it expands the catalog, maybe appeases some customer base. But in reality right now, those products are probably pulling more of a drain than they are of an uplift on your catalog. So cut those out. Tighter cash discipline, being more conscious in terms of investments we're making, whether that's with inventory or it's personnel or it's SaaS tools, really making sure like where are we going to get the greatest return on our investment with those dollars. The fulfillment partnerships, we hit a little bit on SongGuru and the benefits we have of being able to get faster delivery times, makes that product sellable quicker, reduces the timeline that I have for that cash flow not being in sellable conditions. Working with teams like Valiant to make sure that when we are getting our reimbursements, that we're getting the right amount. And if we're not, how do we go about getting those changes made with Amazon? And the things that we touched on here briefly, but transparent leadership. And I think this is a key one for us as business leaders. Anytime that we are working at a time of uncertainty, that bleeds down into your staff, bleeds down into your suppliers. So the more that we can be transparent with them in terms of here's where we are, but also here's what our path forward looks like. And that comes from having those different models that we've talked about, building out those different models based upon different scenarios. When we can show them we have a vision and a path forward, creates that sense of confidence within your team, within your suppliers, that then makes them lean more into you as a leader as well too. And just this ruthless focus on what is the truly profitability and return on your investment. Now's the time to really cut out the waste, focus in on what's working, and then coming out of that, those returns are going to be so much more exponential because you're putting all that energy and dollars into things that are really driving your top line business for you as well too. And we
Yeah.
talked about it's adapt quickly, be ready to preserve those profits now, but make sure you're in a position of growth as we come out of this and being more resilient in 2026.
Hopefully you already have a view of your ROI and your P&L at a SKU level because with all of the complexities, obviously, with the supply chain changing so rapidly, it's very difficult to and complex to figure out what those new costs are going to be. So I think that's a really important one, especially as you're handling all of the tariffs and additional fees that you've never potentially dealt with before. Matt, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I think your expertise in this area is unmatched. So I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody on the call did as well. As we wrap up here, Matt's contact info is on the screen. I'll let him explain this offer that he's running as
Yeah.
well.
So, as I shared, one of the things we really try to emphasize with our brands is making sure we have a lead on what's going on in the category. Just because we see maybe our revenue drawback 5%, we want to know like how's the category performing. Maybe the category is pulling back 15%. So we're actually in a better position than the rest of our competitors. So what we're offering here is if you're interested, shoot me an email, matt@brandsexcel.com, put in the title, free Amazon Market Audit. We will pull either one category, subcategory, or one brand. Let us know what that is. And what we'll do is we'll provide you with a report that shows you the trailing 12 months, revenue, units, number of sellers, average ASP. We'll do that, give you by a market share by brand, by ASIN. We'll give you a split out in terms of what market share is by media spend, all these different things to see like what are the typical trends and split outs by market share for these products. And also the goal here is to help give you more information in terms of how our competitors are performing right now and what do those changes look like in the last 30, 60, 90 days.
I've personally seen the audits that Matt and his team put together, so I can attest that they are very in-depth and very informative. So if you're interested, definitely take him up on that. That's a great offer. All right, Matt, let's go to our first question here, which was from Shannon. This is an interesting one. Obviously, it's just another blow from Amazon in terms of trying to prepare for Prime Day, but a lot of brands are seeing inventory capacity restrictions in FBA. Do you have
Yep.
any advice for? Thank you again, Matt. It was a pleasure having you today, and thank you to everybody who joined. And we will go ahead and end this webinar shortly.
Thanks, Ryan.